Jessica Zweig is a remarkable entrepreneur, author, and spiritual guide. From overcoming body dysmorphia and low self-esteem to building and eventually selling SimplyBe, Jessica's journey is a testament to resilience and authenticity. Her transformative experiences, including a life-changing trip to Egypt, have deeply influenced her approach to leadership and personal fulfillment.
Thank you so much, Jessica Zweig, for joining me here on AwareNow to share this space and to share your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I am in equal gratitude.
Well, let's just get right into it, shall we, Jessica? The thing of it is that you have been through quite the journey with body image, self-esteem. If you would, please share what that journey has been like, and if there was a specific moment that really just changed things for you, maybe something that made you go, this is it, I need to take control. Can you take us on that journey?
Yeah. So I was born into a body that I like to say was short, curvy, and really liked carbs. And I grew up in a community where thin was the ideal. You know, I grew up in sort of the late 90s when Kate Moss was in, and I was never comfortable in my own skin since as long as I can remember. But it wasn't until I went to college, I went to school for theater, I got a degree in acting, and was a really, really good actress. I had back in the day, I had talent. And I, like many girls who go to college, gained the freshman 15, but it was really like the sophomore 30 that stuck around till senior year. And I nonetheless graduated with this classically trained acting degree and went into the industry. And I got an agent and I started auditioning, and I got a coveted meeting at the age of 23 with one of the biggest commercial directors. This was in Chicago, where like the commercial world was it. And I had just graduated college. I was 6 months out of school, and I was so excited to be there, and I was so excited to start my career. And this director looked at me and didn't even ask me my name, just told me to stand up, turn around, sit back down. And he said to me, if you want to be an actress, you're going to need to lose 30 pounds. And you're going to need to get yourself down to a size 0 if you ever want to be on camera. And that one conversation sent me into a decade of obsessive orthorexia, compulsive dieting, overworking out. I didn't get my period for 2 years in my 20s because I was so underweight. I was obsessed with every single book, Atkins, Paleo, Mediterranean, Master Cleanse, like you name it, I did it. And it was the only track, like a radio station in my brain that like I couldn't turn off for like 10 years. I never really truly, up until recently, like healed my relationship with food. What ended up happening in my 30s was I contracted an autoimmune disorder from the chronic stress that I had built up being an entrepreneur. And so my body was never this thing that I cherished. I hated it. It didn't do me, it wasn't functioning the way I wanted it to. I was really, really sick, and that made me super depressed. So I had been on a really big journey with my body most of my adult life. And to answer your beautiful question, like when was it like, this is it? What woke me up? There were a couple moments of awakening. The first was, if I'm going to be really frank, Western medicine, when it came to my autoimmune disorder, just didn't work for me. It failed me, actually. And I got connected to a healer in my late 30s, by the time I was like 36, 37, who asked me to look at my diet, asked me to look at my habits, my stress levels, my sleep habits, just turned me on to this holistic approach to wellness. And she said something to me in that one first meeting I'll never forget. I've taken it with me for the rest of my life. I'm not your healer. You are your own healer. Because I'd been relating to my doctors as my gurus and had surrendered all of my sovereignty and power to them. And she empowered me to learn how to listen to my body, how to trust my body, how to take signals from my body, how to honor my body. And that changed my relationship with what I put in my body and how I moved my body and how I talked to my body. And it was, I would say, not until my late 30s, early 40s that I incorporated like gentle workouts instead of like Soul Cycle and Barry's Boot Camp. I started eating intuitively, instead of restricting. I can't have a cookie. I eat a cookie if I want a cookie, and learning how to really listen to what makes my body feel good. Like I cut out meat for 10 years. I just started eating meat a year and a half ago because I took one bite of my brother's beef taco at a dinner one night because I was interested in trying it. My whole body lit up like an orgasm. Like I'm not kidding. My body was like, oh my God, I missed this. So now I eat meat. Like I think at the end of the day, what's been the most beautiful journey is learning to really see my body as my sacred temple and the home of my soul, and that it is not flesh, blood, bone, size, allergic to gluten. It's a sacred technology. It has light encoded filaments inside my DNA that can allow me to transcend to quantum states of consciousness. Like my body is a vehicle and a bridge between the divine and this earth plane. And so why would I do anything that doesn't feel good to it? And so, yeah, it's been a journey, but I love this question, and I almost can't even believe I'm answering it this way, because for so many decades, it was, I would never have had this language, but it's taken a lot of deep soul work to heal my relationship with my body.
Thank you so much for sharing all that you have. And thank you specifically this sacred technology that is within us. So you often talk about how your spiritual journey has influenced your professional life. How do you bring those spiritual practices into your everyday routine and into your work?
Well, it's funny because people see me as an entrepreneur, a businesswoman. I consider myself a spiritual being more than anything, any other avatar identity. So my spiritual practice is the core of my life. I take every morning at my altar. I do not start my day until I commune with my spirit team, my council, my guides, my angels. Whether it's 20 minutes, an hour, or 5 minutes, truly, I don't skip that. I think it's really important to connect and set your intentions, to ask for support. I really believe that they don't come down unless you invite them. It is a relationship, but they're not going to insert themselves. You have to invite them in. And so I really start my day with that. I really try and get into nature. I mean, I moved my whole life. I was in Chicago. I moved to Nashville. I really devote myself to Gaia. Even if it's sitting on my patio, which I just did, and staring at the bushes, or getting into nature for a 2-hour hike if I've got the time on the weekend. Nature is my harmonizer. Nature is where I truly heal. It's free. And I feel like one of the biggest parts of my spiritual journey is coming home to Gaia and really building a relationship of reciprocity with her and honoring the blessing it is to be here, in this human existence. I'm very into the moon. I'm very into the stars. We're here on the summer solstice. I really love playing with the frequencies of the universe and building ceremony and ritual and intention around all of these beautiful energies that we get to work with. I really believe in the power of ceremony and ritual to ceremonialize everything you can. My husband and I, we just signed a loan for construction because we're building a house, and the person who comes and stamps the thing, I forget the name, the person who does the signature. I I woke up extra early with my husband. My husband's super not into this, but I give him a lot of credit. He comes along with me, and we sat in our living room and we thanked our angels and the helpful people that allowed this to happen, and that we visualized a beautiful, speedy, and seamless home build over the next year that will be in abundance, will be in joy. Like, we spoke these words before this person came to sign the papers. So I look at my life and I try to practice intentionality and ceremony and ritual in everything I do, whether that's something as big as building a house or pushing post on an Instagram post and letting my energy and life force energy go into that post and setting the intention that it's going to reach all the people it needs to reach. I live my life by these principles, and it works for me. And I just am very, very clear that the 3D reality is one of multidimensional realities, and we get to co-create our realities with our thoughts, our feelings, our intentions. And I try and practice that daily. Do I do it every day? Sometimes life persists, but most of the time I do.
I like another word that you use there, reciprocity. So often we, find ourselves in this self-serve society where it's all about, what do I need? What do I have to get? As opposed to, what do I have to give? And so I love how you spoke just a moment ago about that reciprocity with Gaia, with nature, and to be in commune with that.
It's everything. I mean, it's part of why our society is so, in pain and fear. We've disassociated. We've literally disconnected from the honoring of her, which is what's causing so much disease on a macro and micro level in our bodies, in our communities, in our countries. We have so lost our way, living in these big metropolis areas of concrete and steel and glass, and on technology screens all day, and consuming information that at this stage in humanity we've never had the capacity to consume, and yet here we are, and we've really disconnected from that right relationship with the planet.
Yeah, well, and so it's reminders like the ones that you offer, and in sharing in just these conversations that we have to remind each other how to reconnect. And while I very much want to continue down this road, let's redirect for a moment. Let's talk a little business here.
Love it.
So let's deciding to sell brand that you built, SimplyBe. It must have been a huge decision. So I guess my question here is, what were some of the personal and business factors you had to consider, and how did you feel during that time?
Such a beautiful and complex question, because it was a complex experience. I will say, I'll start with sort of the 3D right brain business, or is it left brain business response. So in order to sell your business as a founder, somebody that has built it, and I never raised money, we bootstrapped it. I started it from zero, and in 7 years scaled it to a multi-million-dollar business, 30 employees, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients, 2 offices, built a brand, built an identity. It was my life. It had to be. It was the most consuming creation of my life. And in order to effectively sell a business, it has to detach from you in multiple ways. You have to switch the mindset of, lifestyle business, and even business owner, to asset owner. The business has to transform to become an asset that can technically, factually run without you. That you could go to Fiji for a month and the business would run. Like, that's what makes you a business owner. Otherwise, you're a shopkeeper, and you're there every day to turn on the lights, turn off the lights, service the customers, cashier, check. It's not a sellable asset in that regard. So I had worked really hard over 7 years to build it into an asset. I got really clear about halfway through the journey that I was going to sell it. So I made strategic decisions in hiring and product positioning and how we built our process and operations and systems so that it could scale without me. And that was a very arduous process. I didn't always get the right team right. And as we continue to grow fast, which we were, things broke and we, had to fix them. And it was true startup life, frankly, for 7 years. The second piece to that, though, is that you as the founder have to be mentally and emotionally ready to let go. And so even if you build your business up as an asset and you're not ready to let go, it's not going to work. And on the flip side, if you're totally ready to let go, but your business isn't an asset yet, that can also be very painful. So I had arrived at a place where both were in place. I had this is a huge part of my story, my new book, The Lightwork, built this big, beautiful company that for many years was completely on purpose until it wasn't, until it was out of alignment. And I still had to run it and play the role. And it brought me to my knees. And I really, really went through a deep, dark year of burnout and depression in 22. And something shifted in me internally that year, if I'm going to be really honest. Like I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I still was in it. And I went on a trip to Egypt at the end of that year. I went, to Nashville. I hired some really powerful spiritual healers. I went through this deep year after that year. 22 was my year of darkness and depth. 23 was my year of healing. And in 23, as I started to heal my body, my business started to heal. But I still wasn't really wanting to do it forever. Like I had kind of realized this was going to need to be a shift regardless, didn't know when. And I believe the universe has my back. And I got a call halfway through 23 in July from a company that wanted to buy me. And I was ready. And the business was ready. And so that experience of saying yes to the acquisition, frankly, was 6 months of due diligence. There was stress that came with that, even though I was ready and so was the business. I don't want to sugarcoat that. What was really the most challenging, honestly, is when we were actually a new business as of January 1st, and I wasn't in charge anymore. And the business is now being run by so many other people, and I'm not copied on emails or included in invites and meetings and Slacks. And I'm like, wait. The first few months of the actual acquisition were tough, but I kept coming back to my why, and I wanted this, and continued to surrender, and I'm through that, and I'm very, very grateful to be on the other side.
Well, I love how you speak to it's not just the asset that it is, but it's your connection to that asset, right? And being a founder myself, being an entrepreneur, the AwareNow, I can't imagine. That's like, so Jack and I, we have 6 kids. AwareNow is like our 7th. It's like a child to us, and so completely hear you and feel you. That connection when professional life bleeds into and becomes immersed in, the personal and professional, that blending and unblending that's required in order to move forward. So
Such a process.
Yeah, process for sure. So you mentioned a moment ago that Egypt. So your trip to Egypt, life changing. Can you share how that experience shifted your views on leadership and also on personal fulfillment?
Yeah, beautiful question. So I went to Egypt. I planned this trip a year before I went. I had no idea the timing of how it would line up, that I would be super burnt out and cashed like an ashtray with my life when I rolled up to O'Hare to fly to Cairo. Like I was a bag of bones. And I'm a world traveler. I've been to 35 countries. Like, I love to travel. It's my thing. I had no idea what to expect from Egypt. I had no idea that it was going to absolutely alter the course of my life. It was by far and away the biggest experience I've ever had. And what's important to note about Egypt, it's not a vacation. I went on a spiritual pilgrimage, and you are up at 4 or 5, 3 sometimes in the morning, going through these temples. And there are multiple temples along the Nile and Cairo and Aswan and Luxor, and each and every temple is, we were guided by a very powerful mystic. And you kind of have to go. I would recommend, if you do go to Egypt and you want to have a more spiritual experience, that you don't go the traditional tourist route, that you hire guides that, for lack of a better word, are kind of dialed in and know what's up. And because these temples they're not just structures, they're alive, and they have frequencies in these walls that allow you to have these incredible experiences within them. These experiences, when you tell them to the average person back in America, you sound crazy. Like, that didn't happen. That's a movie, or you must have been on drugs. There's none of the above. You have these mind-altering, psychedelic-like, physical, mental, emotional, clairaudient experiences. So that was happening to me in temple after temple after temple. I write about a lot of them in my new book. The biggest, most significant one, was when I was at the temple of Dendera, who is the temple of Hathor, the goddess of Hathor. She's the goddess of bliss. She's the goddess of frequency, joy, pleasure, fertility. And to make a long story short, I was struck by white lightning in her temple, and my whole auric field expanded beyond planet Earth. And I started hearing all of these voices that I know to be the voices of the Pleiadians. And they were speaking to me in such rapid succession, and the reason why I can relay this is because when I was out of the temple, I literally picked up my iPhone and went into my notes app and wrote down verbatim everything I had heard, because I didn't want to forget a word of it. And to answer your beautiful question of how did it shape me as a leader, or how did it shape me in my life, the messages I got in Hathor's temple that day, remembering that she is the goddess of bliss, they told me that I had missed the whole plot of the human experience, which was joy, to experience joy, to enjoy my life, to actually revel in the blissful experience it is to be in a human body on planet Earth. And that I had missed the memo by killing myself to succeed, to prove, to grip, to grind, to hustle as the successful leader, boss babe, agency owner, scaling a business, that I had gone about it the wrong way. And the second thing they had told me was that the feminine frequency is rising right now, that there is a shift occurring on a planetary level of the feminine energies and the goddess cultures and the matriarchy and the feminine frequency of how this planet was established is returning. And that I'm a leader of that movement, but not just me, that all women are. And it was my job to be a messenger of this message. And this is really what inspired the entire book. And so I've shifted, to answer your question again, how I lead. I have softened, I have shape-shifted. I lead my business, which is still very successful, from a really different place, a softer place, a more gentle place, a more in flow and aligned and receptive place. And I make joy a practice. Like, joy is not a fleeting emotion like happiness. Joy is a choice. It's a daily devotion. It's a holy commitment. It is a radical act to remember that's our birthright, to choose it above all else. Not to say that I don't have dark days, but to really make joy my job. Radically different avatar today telling you this than I was before I left for that country. So it changed everything. It changed my entire life. It blew up my life in the most beautiful way.
I got goosebumps several times as you were sharing that story. And I just can't imagine how all consuming, how I just thank you for sharing. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
you're welcome. Thank you for asking the question.
Let's talk about light work. Let's talk about the light work. Those unfamiliar, what's the story behind the story? Was it your trip to Egypt? There we are. What are people going to get when they read through these pages, from the front to the cover to the back of the cover? What will we find?
I'm going to be bold and say that there's no book like this book. It is a cosmic homecoming to the truth of who you are, and that you will read these pages and remember that. You will remember who you are. It is a spiritual empowerment book for the modern day woman who goes through a lot of dark shit in her life. And whether that's, in her emotional capacity to feel her feelings, to feel her personal power, to love her body as sacred technology, to heal her family trauma, to understanding the real point of romantic love, which is to amplify how much we love ourselves, female friendships, and how we can heal the sister wound, because we've all been through horrible things with women, how to really get our relationship with money finally right and embodied, that we are wealthy as a birthright, and to learn how to trust that. It is a guidebook from your inner, outer, and into the future, why you're here on this planet as a light worker at this time on assignment, with a deep responsibility to live your light. And the way that we find our light is to face the dark. This is not a spiritual woo-woo, bypassed love and light, gratitude is the attitude, everything happens for a reason type of stuff. This is really real. And I have allowed myself to be naked in this book in a way that I have never been in any of the content I've ever shared. I realize that this is, while it is somewhat of a memoir-esque through my personal stories, this is not about me. I wrote this book in 3 months. This channeled through me in 3 months flat. I didn't use a ghostwriter. I didn't hire, I didn't use ChatGPT. Every word I wrote came from another source. And I am very clear I was simply the vessel to bring this message to humanity. It's filled with codes. It talks about the Pleiadians. It talks about DNA. It talks about Egyptian goddess medicine. It talks about Gaia. It talks about the feminine frequency, our role here as women. It's a very robust book. And in certain ways, when I get asked, what's it about? I have a hard time giving it a snippet because it's so multidimensional. I really believe I've written the ultimate kind of guidebook on what it means to be a light worker today, and how to live your light worker identity, and why, not only why it matters, but why you have to, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, for sure. That urgency that all of us feel, but really aren't always sure how to respond to, perhaps.
Yeah.
So let's talk hats. You wear so many of them, right? I mean, businesswoman, author, spiritual guide. I guess my last question for you today is, how do you keep yourself grounded and authentic with so much going on? How do you do it? And perhaps in sharing how you do it, the rest of us who are trying to figure it out, we might figure it out as well.
Yeah. I'm going to be really pedestrian here. So it's good sleep. I have an Oura ring. I track my sleep. That is my foundation to my mental health, is my sleep. I drink a lot of water. I hydrate with mineralization. I use Element. I use a brand called Biofulvic. I try and eat a lot of protein every day. There are certain seasons. Right now I'm in a book launch. So I'm on a lot of calls, a lot of meetings, and I really try, instead of, I get 15, 20 minutes in between. I don't just sit and plow through work. I go stand in the sun. I go dance, move my body. I have some nervous system drills that I do to help calibrate my nervous system. I really believe it's okay to be busy and have seasons of busy and seasons of slow. And if you're in a season of busy, I call them lily pads. Like think about like a frog that like leaps, like constantly like going through the like pond. It needs like a lily pad to like finally just chill. So I try and budget in what I call my lily pads, like at least once a quarter. So I'm taking a 7-day juice cleanse detox in Baja, Mexico next week. I mean, that's a luxury and a privilege. I get that, but I have time budgeted to unplug. I have time over Labor Day weekend to unplug. Like I can see my year and know that I have these lily pads that allow me to really recalibrate, because we're built and I shouldn't say we're built. We're not built actually to run at the rate and the pace that this world somehow requires of us. And we have to be boundaried. We have to be sovereign and non-negotiable in our non-negotiables.
All good words. I feel like I'm going to go back through and take note of so many different words and terms that the words in themselves are wonderful reminders and sort of redirectors that we need in our life, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Truly, Jessica, thank you for taking this time, sharing your story, sharing the space for helping all of us become a bit more aware now. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was truly like such a beautiful moment of my day. You have beautiful energy. I'm deeply honored that my story resonated with you enough for you to ask me to come on your platform and have the privilege and honor of sharing my story with your community. I do not take it lightly, and I hope that we stay in touch and stay connected. You're a light worker. I can see it.